Jean coming to you today, coming around the final 220 in our series, diving into right effort. And this truly isn't a lot of work. This is about peace and ease and tranquility and joy and happiness. And it's also uncovering the 5 hindrances. And what are those? Those are the things that trip us up, get in our way, and prevent us from living a life as a Buddha. I'm curious, I hope you are too. Stay watching as we find out what Buddha meant when he looked at right effort. Another word for right effort, diligence. Let's find out more in this video series here on Mean Jean 1963. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Looking to spread the word. More Buddhas, please. Enjoy. Hello. Welcome back, Bhikkhus, to our Sangha. You can see the poster behind me from our class, our group, our Buddhist community. So excited. I say that every time. Every time I do one more class, I get that more immersed in this work. What I've really been enjoying so far is, it's kind of back to like my old sales training. There's so many different ways to learn the different techniques, and you come away with better dialogue or a better understanding of the techniques and skills you already had. This is truly doing that for me, and I hope it's also happening to you and expanding you and giving you better language and better awareness and becoming more enlightened as we walk the Eightfold Path together. Where are we? We finished wisdom, right? So we're seeing things the right way. We're thinking the right way. We moved into the ethics and the morality of it when we got into our effort and our actions and our livelihood. And now we finished that last month. And now we're stepping into the mental aspect of the Dharma wheel. When we look at the right effort, this what I love. I say that every time because I love every single one of the paths, but what I love about this one shows up quite often in my spiritual practice. And if you've worked with me, you know, have I ever told you to go out and have more joy in your life? And I go, you're getting the best homework I've ever given. Have you ever left my office and I've asked you to be in a better position to receive because you're not supposed to do anything now but just be in a position to receive? It shows up so often, those two aspects in my spiritual practice and trying to assist people. Stop working so hard. You know the expression, you'll find love when you stop looking. And if you've worked with me, I've taken those magnets and I've held them up together and you felt the pull between the two. That truly is all that aspect of being in the energy when Buddha was talking about right effort. And what right effort truly means is it's not pushing, it's not forcing, it's not trying, it's not pushing, it's not clinging, right? It's the middle way. It's finding the balance between all that, but to be in a position of complete and utter joy and being calm. And he believes, and I do too, that when you're in that space, you bring and project more joy into the world and less greed, less ignorance, less unwholesome thoughts. Okay, so now that I've set up what this class is all going to be about, let's dive into the work of the right effort and what Buddha meant. And he's got some great tips and steps that I have in front of me that I'm going to give to you. Okay, so the first thing that we should remind ourselves is that we truly do know what wholesome thoughts are and unwholesome thoughts. We know what clinging is, we know what impermanence is, we know what equanimity is, right? That middle way. We know what it's like to be pushing on something. We know what it's like to be grasping for something. We've learned so much. Okay, so let's apply some of what we already know to this class when we look at right effort. So the first thing that Buddha wants us to know is to just stop thinking and revert or stop feeding those unwholesome thoughts that happen when they come up. And what is an unwholesome thought? Do I really need to tell you? Greed, anger, hatred, ignorance. Okay, what are the opposites of that? Generosity, happiness. What was the last one I just gave? Wisdom. Okay, so first thing Buddha says in his teachings is to just stop thinking those unwholesome thoughts. Okay, so the second thing that he wants us to do when we do have that experience is to put out or extinguish or diminish or change that unwholesome thought that is arising. So when it starts to, one of the teachers gave a great example. How do you know that there's a fire? There's usually a sign, and it's smoke, right? So when that smoke starts to kind of kick up in us and we start to get that little adrenaline buzz and we start to go down those unwholesome thoughts and we're getting angry or we're being envious or we're whatever we're doing, we feel it as a negative energy. We certainly know when it's a negative energy, right? So what Buddha's asking us to do in the second thing is, first off, stop it. Second thing is to push it out, to stop going there and stop feeding it. And that makes total sense, right? And then the third is to cultivate wholesome thoughts. And we're actually going to be doing that in this class when I tell you one of our projects that we're getting ready to do. And what does he mean by cultivate generous thoughts or wholesome thoughts? Generosity, loving kindness, being wise, being kind, being giving, okay? Cultivating more of that, please. Our class is part of that process. Making you look at your life is part of that process. Changing how you're seeing things is part of that. So that's what he means when he says cultivate wholesome thoughts. And then the last one, number 4, in the example of the 4 I'm giving today in the Buddhist teachings, is he's really asking us to expand that and grow if it's already in place. So, like we're doing with our karma plants, we're tending to them, we're taking care of them. So he's saying more of that, please. And if you have worked with me, you know that's one of my favorite sayings. If you're in a moment of joy, and we do this in class, and I've heard you guys use this expression, something beautiful happens and we'll all say, more of that, please. Say more of that. That's what we mean when we talk about expanding and growing what is already beautiful and around us in the fruitful thoughts. Okay, so here's where we dive into in this class. We're going to pull out our card that you received in class, and it's the 5 hindrances. So in right effort, this is where this work shows up. And if you've noticed, these cards have been pretty much in every video. So how perfect that you have your own copy. Okay, so I'm going to list the 5 hindrances. And think about this. We're going to apply these to our everyday life, out into the world. Buddha was applying them to that, but also for meditation. He was calling these the 5 hindrances that get in our way of having an unchallenging meditation. So if these things were not in our experience, in our head, and we were thinking, and remember we're in the mental aspect of the Dharma wheel, then we could meditate right and the right way. We could be calm. We could really get what we're trying to do. We could become enlightened. Okay, we wouldn't be fidgeting in the rest of it. So here are the 5 hindrances. Number 1, we have desire, clinging, craving. I think you should be a master of that one by now. We have talked about it so much in class. Number 2 is aversion, pushing something away. That can't happen. I don't like that. That's wrong. Anger and certainly hatred would be considered one of the 5 hindrances. Sleeplessness, which I think we would call today laziness. And sloth. Sloth is like it sounds, not being motivated. Jim Carrey comes to mind. I love his work. I'm sure he's a Buddhist because he talks about the not self and not being, none of it matters. And you'll hear a lot of his same language as you'll hear in this class. And he was talking about and admitting that he has suffered much depression. And he said, I realized I was depressed when I was in deep rest and I couldn't get out of bed. So he realized that was unhealthy, and that's really how he was able to fight his depression, was recognizing, hey, that he had it, but that he was just so tired and couldn't get out of bed. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about restlessness and sleepiness and sloth. Just being so deep mired in the thick of our lives that we can't move. Okay, let's move on. And then the last one out of the 5 hindrances is, of course, doubt. And I love doubt. I'm going to talk more about doubt in class and give you some antidotes to doubt as 5 of the hindrances. Okay, let's move on and talk about the 4 steps in the Buddhist teachings regarding what the monk was explaining, what you can do when these unwholesome thoughts show up in your experience. And the first one is to just notice that they're coming in. So why do we feed them, by the way? Have you noticed that? You have a negative thought come in, and I always say old genie, new genie. The old genie would have just fed that all day and to protect myself. And maybe I should do a little bit more research on it, right? And then just waste the whole day worrying about something that never actually was going to take place anyway. Call that prevention, I call that lunacy, okay? So the first thing is that if that unwholesome thought comes into your beautiful brain, to just notice it. Notice that it's there and that it doesn't love and support you. Okay, let's keep going. The second thing in the Buddhist teachings when these unwholesome thoughts come out is to divert away from them. So they start to come in, shut them down, go the other way. Think of the different thought. Feed another emotion. As I say quite often in class, a better feeling thought, please. What would that be? Let's keep going. Number 3 is to actually go to the opposite. If you've worked with me recently, I've got this beautiful new process called the card process, and it really can measure your happiness. And if you haven't done that work with me, reach out to me. I think most of you have. And what you'll know in that work is I go through this whole process where we identify your energy blocks. And let's say one of them is impatience or anger. And what do I tell you? The polarity is in the antidote. The antidote is in the polarity. And I make you go to the opposite emotion. So shows up in Buddhist teaching. It's the same principle. When that emotion comes up and you're feeling hatred for somebody, I hope you're not. Take that word out of your vocabulary if it's there. Anything, the word hatred is karma back on you, okay? So even if you use, oh, I hate that, even if it's, I hate when the butter melts the wrong way on your toast, okay? It's still negative energy being put out. So be mindful of that. Let's move on. If, where am I going with that? I'm going to the opposite energy. Let's say you hate something, okay, or you hate someone or something that they did. Obviously, the opposite emotion of hatred is acceptance and understanding and patience, and and not putting that judging, okay, discerning, putting that energy out there. So, number 3 is to go to that energy. Recognize it, divert from away from it. And if it's still there, now we go to the opposite energy of it. It will solve it for you. And the last one is to revolt against it. So an unwholesome thought is to feed it a little bit more. And I know that it sounds like a contradiction from the last 3, but what do I mean by that? If you're going to just totally, I'm going on an all-girls weekend and, could potentially be offered alcohol or something, let's do this, let's sit around and do nothing the whole time, I could easily just sit and eat junk food and cake the whole time. So to revolt against that would be like, oh, when I eat that, I'm going to feel like this tomorrow, and I'm going to, the sugar is going to really upset me for tomorrow, so I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll only have it Wednesday instead of all 3 days. You get where I'm going. So you go to the extreme of why it's not good for you. Hopefully I've made that make sense. Okay, let's dive into this month's class and the questions and how we're going to apply right effort to you over the next 30 days and in class. Are you ready? Let's do it. Okay, so first I'm going to start with this setup for question number 1. We all have this little voice inside our head. If you listen to it and it's all positive, some call it intuition, okay? Others can call it, if it's not so positive, it can sound like ego, okay? One of my videos, you hear me go, ego. I catch it. So higher self or ego. And when that voice kind of kicks up in your head, a lot of people ask me, well, Ginny, how do you know the difference? So I'm just going to do my best to explain it the way I have before, which is if it's loving, kind, supportive, warm, you can't do wrong, you're perfect, and it's supporting you, and it feels like, it'll give you always a pass, it is absolutely higher self. Higher self can never be critical of you. Can't be. It's impossible. Ego can. If it seems cold, controlling, you're an idiot, you should have known better, why didn't you know that? This is your 10th time doing that, you're not that good, you're not that smart. If it sounds and feels like that, it is not higher self, my friend. It is absolutely ego. And so let's take ego on steroids. Or is it critical voice? Or is it abuse from past relationships and it's not even your voice that you're hearing? Okay, I want you to look at that this time. I want you to look at this in the question that I'm about to ask and identify that for yourself. Is it your mother you're hearing? Is it your ex-husband you're hearing? Is it your boss that is giving you, dukkha right now in your job? Okay, or is it literally you? So here's my question. I'll read that all and I'll make sense in a minute. Here's how it sounds. We all have that internal voice inside our head, higher self or intuition or ego or critical voice. Can you distinguish the difference between the two? What voice do you hear in your head? Is it yours or someone else's? Please explain. I love that. I can't wait. We're probably only going to be able to share 1 or 2 of those. It depends on how many people are feeling generous or have had that experience. And I'm sure women, I hate to single this out, but maybe because 90% of who I work with are women, we have issues with this. And if you're somebody who doesn't, or you did and now you've got this and you've nailed it for yourself, please share it with the group. We could learn from you, okay? And I have plenty of stories that I could share. So hopefully I can be one of those people. Moving on, number 2 for classwork, for your work. Hey, free coaching, guys, right? You can do as much of this or as little of this as you want. Your benefit will be the same. What are your top 3 hindrances that are in your experience? So you got your little card. You can do 5. I'd say 5, but if you want to do top 3, that's fine. Extra credit for 2. What are your top 3 hindrances? And you can use this card or you can come up with your own. And they don't even have to be on the card. They can be examples of things that are, getting in your way. What unwholesome thoughts are you having about yourself that are getting and preventing you from living the life that you want and causing you dukkha? Okay? I want you to identify what they are for you. And here's your homework with that. Pick one, just one, out of those hindrances, unwholesome thoughts, and write a daily affirmation for yourself. If you're not good about writing affirmations, Facebook message me. I can do it like that. Okay, let's move on. Question number 3. With the hindrances from above that you've just listed out, find the opposite emotion of each. It's just like the homework of finding out, I'm telling you to do and find the opposite. You better know what the opposite emotion of the ones you've picked out. So if it was hatred, what's the opposite of hatred? Acceptance, understanding. If it's impatience, it would be patience. If it's, I could go on and on, right? If it's frustration, again, it would be acceptance. So you identify what your block is, and then just go to the opposite emotion. And again, look it up online, antonyms or whatever they're called. You can see it right there in the dictionary definition. Okay, and the last one that we're going to be working with in class is going to be a community effort, a sangha effort. And that is, we all have people in our community that are suffering, that are in a situation where they could use generosity, maybe some wisdom and some support. Maybe they need someone to read to them or wash their hair or whatever they need, okay? Food, organization, whatever you think. If you have somebody in your beautiful community that you're in right now, this is your opportunity to submit or bring or say, I know a guy down the street, I don't know his name, but here's his situation. I would think out of the 17 people that are taking this class and however many online, that as a community, we could get together and really change the world. You know me, I want to change the world. Let's start here with our group, right? So can you come or bring an idea or a suggestion? And maybe it's somebody in group. I'm open to that. So I'm going to let the group decide, and then we are also going to decide, well, what does that mean? What are we going to do? And maybe someone just hears it and takes off with it. I'm okay with that too. If some good can come out of a collection of effort, see my great click there, then we're doing the right thing. So that's it. 2 last things to think about when you think about Jean, right effort, is a great example one of the monks gave in a podcast. He said, do you remember when you were a child and you were learning how to swim? And I do. My father just kind of held, my head a little bit and then my butt just a little bit more. And he said, relax, trust, let go, you got this. And it really was the non-effort that allowed me to float. And it was really a cool experience, okay? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about right effort. That is what Buddha was talking about. And then the other example of right effort in just a joyful way is, I'm sure there is something in your life that you do. Canine search and rescue comes to mind, being creative, goddess yoga, pottery, all of us, cutting hair, Deb, okay? When you're doing it, you look up at the clock and time just flies. When I'm immersed in a painting or doing editing or videoing, hours can go by and somebody will have to pull me out of it. Time flies when you're having fun, okay? That is what Buddha is talking about. Our life literally should not be suffering, right? We should not be looking at the clock and dreading another day or another minute, or I have to go back to work. And as I've said to somebody in group once, and I did this in my life, my days were great, but I would get home and I'd dust off my day at the door and I'd walk into abuse. So there was this whole split of suffering. It was great at work and not so good at home. And, so when I talk about joy, joy should be this, the goal for happiness should be around the energy of right effort. And if things are hard and you're working and you're pushing and nothing's coming from it, then my point to you in the right effort and doing the Buddhist teachings is to tell you you're trying way too hard. And that's what Buddha is talking about when he's talking about right effort. I love that. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I can leave you with that. You will be back in circle in another week, a week or two, depending on how organized I am to put up this video. I am happy to bring this class to you. We're in the mental aspect as we wrap up. Next month, we get into mindfulness, which is just going to be an extension of right effort. And we end with concentration, and that is the last class. I'm sure as a group we'll decide to do something. Maybe it's our community service. This is Jeannie Lynch signing off. Love and light and light and love. Thank you again for being part of this video series. I will see you next month. Satnam Bhikkhus.